that woman said in the government about disability benefits, and you're taking the money away from the most vulnerable people in society, and it angers me. It really does anger me, because the disabled and even the mentally ill, not if it's just mild cases, they're not the most vulnerable people in society. Poor people are more vulnerable than them. I think, to think that my sister is more vulnerable than me because of her stupidity and mental illness, I think it's incredibly wrong. Because considering I was doing outcalls, I had actually a phone call yesterday, and I'm realizing that I haven't had any clients in a long time, and the 8 clients that I first contacted haven't come back. So I tried reaching out to a couple more people, and one person called me up, was quite adamant that he wanted to see me today, and I was happy to, but I had just come back from the cinema. I went to the cinema, so I was actually very close to where he lived, and I just come back, and I was not in the mood to leave and go out and do an out call. And he sounded genuine. He called me up, and he just sounded like a normal person, and he was insistent that I go and do an out call. And then I said, I made it clear I don't do hand relief or extras, and then he sent me a text: "I'll give you £400. Well, you're going to be expecting a lot more for that." And then he said, no, just come. No, I'm not coming for 400. I mean, you're obviously going to expect more. And then do you know what he sent me? He sent me a video of him dressed up like a woman, dancing around, shaking his bum. And, I have no problem with cross genders. I really don't. But he was trying to book me for a massage, just a plain massage, no extras. And he seemed happy, actually. The first couple of texts seemed like he didn't mind the fact that I didn't do extras. But then with this random £400, I'll give you £400 to do bondage or something like that. And then I'm just thinking how dangerous it would be for me to, if I would have gone on the belief that that it was just a normal session, and then to come across someone who just I can show you the picture if you want, actually, to prove that I'm not just lying about it. I don't know, it's someone who, I don't know, it's just someone who sent me a text, but I don't want to say too much about this, but I'm not going to say too much, because I have no problem with cross dressers or anything like this. But I do have a problem if someone wants to book a massage with someone and then do an out call and just I would have gone, if I had have gone, I would have gone assuming that it was just going to be a normal session, a normal massage, and have like no recollection that someone who sent this, I mean, I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask for him to send me pictures of him wearing a dress and looking like a woman. I have no problem with that, and I'm not saying that this is wrong, but I'm saying that he probably has a mental illness. If you've said to someone, "Hi, I'm a cross dresser and I would like a massage with me wearing cross outfits," I've had people say that, and I have no problem with it. But for me, it just felt like that came out of nowhere. I was not expecting that, and he was quite persistent that I came last night and I didn't. And he said, I might have another booking tonight. I don't know, but he said if I don't get a booking tonight, then can I 100% come to him? And he's kind of in my gym, actually, so it's actually quite easy to get to him. But now that I've seen that, I just feel like if he would have told me that he did it before, I think it would have been understandable. But because he just randomly sent that, I'm just like, yeah, I could be going to any. I kind of realised him sending me that has made me realise how much danger there is in just going to a stranger's house. And him sending me that has made me realise how much danger that I placed myself in when I was doing this. I know there was one time in Aston that I went to Aston in the middle of the dark and went to this random house, and I was very creeped out because the house seemed to be behind these sort of gates. I don't know what was going on, but when I got there, he said that he would only let me in if I give him hand jobs and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm coming back. So there was one time where I had this bad experience. It wasn't a bad experience, it was just I went there on the belief that it was just going to be massage, and he made that clear that he was okay with that. And then when I got outside, he said he would only let me through the door if I offered a lot more. So I left, and I actually think that was one of the last times I did an out call. But yeah, placing yourself in that kind of situation, that makes you vulnerable. Now, I wasn't mentally ill back then. This was before I knew I was God. I wasn't mentally ill. I wasn't disabled. I was just poor. And I would have done that for £60. Just go to a complete stranger's house. And some of the houses that I've been to, I know one of the regulars that I see now, I do know where he lives, and oh my God, his house is incredibly creepy. And I've been once there, had to walk straight into the basement. I spent the whole time thinking that I was about to be kidnapped, but he was actually an okay guy. And it's strange how, anyway, his house is very creepy. But yeah, there's, this is the sort of danger that you place yourself in by being poor. And then the idea that the governments are going to say that 700,000 people are going to be in poverty because of this, and it's just ridiculous, because I'm thinking about the two people who I know who've been claiming it. One of them lives in a nice house in Hampstead Court, has a husband who's a taxi driver, and fairly wealthy, and I know that she was about to inherit a hugely expensive house from her mum, but I think she had a sister, and I think there was even a temptation to let her sister have the house so that she can claim that she's still poor, so she can still claim benefits even though technically the house was been hers. I don't know what happened with the situation, but I remember that was something that they wanted. She wanted to get the benefits and keep the benefits, so she was tempted to sign away her wealth to her sister or to just some other family member so that she could claim that she was still poor and trying to get the benefits. This is what I've experienced. And then I've had my sister who's renting out a room for £500 a month, plus she's got an extra flat. Okay, she's given it to my mum, and my mum gave her money to allow this, but she's still she's still desperately wanting to buy a house, even though she's only got £20,000. So she's really wanting me to give all the money I can give, which I can actually afford 15% more of the house, which would benefit me doing that. And then if she did that, she would have £40,000. She can remortgage the one bedroom and then take out another huge gigantic mortgage. But I'm not going to do that, because she's just going to get herself in a massive mess, because she's not going to be able to pay it back. And with one information that I found is that if you haven't paid the mortgage in 3 months, the banks can just repossess the house, sell it on auction, and then sell it for a lot less money than what you paid. And so she could lose £100,000 just in the sale alone. If she pays £400,000 for it and the sale in the auction goes for £300,000, she's just lost £100,000. But apparently by English law, the money she could only pay off the mortgage. Anything that's more than the mortgage does actually go back to her. That's what someone has told me. I don't know if that's the truth or not, but I've been told that. But yeah, my sister's not vulnerable. Okay, during the mental breakdown that she had, she had a 2-year mental breakdown where money was not her concern though. She had money, she had 70,000 in her bank, and money was not going to help her out of the situation. Her being mentally stable enough to not just meet strangers on a bench and then go off and walk with them and then have sex with them, her not doing that would have kept her safe and not vulnerable. But so the idea that the PIP money is going to take vulnerable people, is going to not help vulnerable people and make them food impoverished. I'm not speaking very well. The idea that taking this benefit money off them is going to make them food impoverished is ridiculous, because my sister has been claiming it. She hasn't actually. I have to also say this, okay? Sometimes when I give information, I say the wrong thing. I'm thinking the right thing in my head, but I'm saying the wrong thing. My sister has been on PIP for 6 years, but I know. If I keep saying this, in one of the videos I said 2 years because it feels like 2 years. So when I said 2 years, I really meant longer, but my time memory is not very good, and 2 years feels like 6 years, and technically I think I've even said 5 years later on in that video, which is a contradiction because it's either 2 years or 5 years. I know sometimes I say the wrong thing, and it doesn't mean that I'm giving the wrong information. It just means that I'm saying the wrong thing because I'm not. My brain doesn't work properly, okay? I don't know why I keep changing. If I'm saying contradictions, sometimes it's just that I'm making errors in my speech, okay? So I'm trying to give the right information, but it's hard when remembering time is not something that I'm very good at. But yeah, she because I could say that she's been claiming it for 5 years. I've said 2 years, I've said 5 years, and then I've realized that actually my sister's first son is now 5 years old, and she has actually been claiming it for a year before that. So actually, it's actually more like she's been claiming it for 6 years. And I don't mind if it's a tax back thing. Her husband paying a lot of tax, and if this personal PIP was about getting tax money, then I feel like it's not money that's being taken off the average person and given to her. It's money that's taken off her husband and given to her to make her independent. I understand that, but this idea, this thing has been going round in my head, the idea that there are people in the government that see mentally ill people and disabled people as being far more vulnerable, as being the most vulnerable people in society. And then I'm thinking, hang on, I was standing outside these really dangerous places, going into different houses, going into strangers' houses, just so I can make 60 quid. I mean, wouldn't that not count as someone who was vulnerable? I wasn't mentally ill. I wasn't even depressed back then. I was fairly, well, I was happy compared to what I am now. And then to think that there's people living in nice houses and nice secure locations, and not having to feel like you're going to be raped when you walk down the streets because you're just seeing all these immigrants and you're thinking, right, I'm gonna be willing to give you a fucking good kicking if you dare touch me. I'm hearing all these stories, and it is actually making me feel making me feel scared to walk down the streets, because I feel like these people are capable of just dragging me into the bush. But don't worry, I've got my I've got a lot of anger in me, and I'm pretty sure that if someone does that, they're going to be dead within a couple of seconds. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the day that someone tries that on me, because I'm going to be very good at taking out my anger. But yeah, this is how I'm feeling. And if the government really are trying to help the most vulnerable, they first need to recognize who the most vulnerable people are. The most vulnerable people are children. If you give older people allowance, take away their heating allowance, okay, it's they might be likely to die because of getting a cold, getting ill. They might not be able to afford heating. This might be the situation. Or they might be the type of elderly people who are just used to the days where they used to have the heating on all day, heat up the living room downstairs. They might go downstairs, they don't know if they really will. A lot of elderly people used to heat the whole house up. And I know some elderly people who actually have a jacuzzi, and they said they used to keep the jacuzzi on 24 hours a day, and because of the costs going up, they decided to only keep it on during the summer months. Okay. All right. Well, I'm incredibly jealous of you. But it's just because you're elderly doesn't mean that you are vulnerable, because you might actually have a huge family support network. You might have a huge wealth. You might have lots of money coming through. And the idea that Sophie says that it doesn't matter how much money you have in the account, it doesn't matter how much your house owns. And then you've got the government saying that these people are all the most vulnerable people in society. It's so not the truth. It's so not the truth. People who have no money are the most vulnerable. People who have families and kids and are not very stable, they are the most vulnerable. But social services can easily take advantage of people who are good parents by claiming that they're not, just so that, I feel like my mum is slightly vulnerable with the courts, because the courts have got some sort of my sister's ex-husband made a restraining order on her a very long time ago, because she delivered a present into their house at Christmas, and he wasn't happy. So he started making up a bunch of allegations. There was no proof that this happened. There was nothing to back it up, but this restraining order went on. And I think there was one time in court where he sat next to her, and he won custody of the child. And my mum said, "Are you happy now?" And he again used that as a way of trying to get the restraining order to be another 2 years. And then I think there was a missed phone call that my sister didn't get. And he literally did that, obviously to get Sophie, to aggravate Sophie, so she would come over to the house. They came into the house, tried to get this 15 minutes that they were allowed to have, and again he used that as a way of getting another restraining order. So there's been like about 4 years on my sister and about 6 years on my mum, and I don't understand what's going on with my mum, because they've been making her go into court over and over again. And that's an example of the Crown Court taking advantage of vulnerable people. You have taken advantage of my mum, who's not able to just say that this is ridiculous, and and you're just taking advantage of vulnerable people. And yet what you're doing is saying, oh, we need to give disabled people and mentally ill people money. My mum is disabled and mentally ill. Well, she's not disabled, but she's mentally ill and she's not very well, but she doesn't even know she's mentally ill, so she would not make a claim for things like this. And the idea that they think that all mentally ill people should get this claim, and if you cut it, there's going to be a lot of people, suffering from it. Well, I would say that there's a lot of people that are mentally ill and don't realize that they're mentally ill. I think everyone that works for the Crown Court who thinks that it's fine to just harass people for saying, are you happy now in court, because someone who's got a restraining order and someone decides to sit next to that person, and or because someone wants to deliver a Christmas present at someone's. It's insane. It's absolutely insane how many mentally ill people there are in this world. And then you've got the courts who are clearly mentally ill saying that mentally ill people are the most vulnerable people in society. You know what? If that was the truth, then these people need to get out of the court system and stop making the decisions for other people who are smarter than them. I'm so angry about this idea that mentally ill people who are living in nice houses, have people looking after them, have family support. Maybe their family owns a company and then they can only work, a couple of hours. I've got a friend who has who has a lot of money and property, and his parents own a company, and now he can't work. He spends most of the time lying down like I do, but because his family have a company that he can work for, if he wants to just stop and say, I'm going to work a couple of hours there, he can do that. He's a hard worker. When he works very hard, and he's got family that help him, and he's not on benefits. Okay, I'm not saying that he's not on benefits, but the thing is, how do you know that the people who are claiming benefits who are disabled or mentally ill, how do you know that they are not in a similar situation where they've got family helping them, where they've got a bunch of houses where they're renting out their room to make lots of money, maybe even renting out their sofa so they can make lots of money, and what they're also claiming benefits on top of that? And then the idea that there's people that can come over here from a different country because of a visa, and then they can bring their girlfriend, and what can their girlfriend or their husband or their wife, can these people claim benefits because their partner or that has a citizenship? I don't know. I don't know when it comes to people claiming benefits that don't even belong in the country, that are only here for a couple of years, who maybe haven't paid any tax. I just don't know the statistics, and I don't even know how I would find out what the statistics are, because I feel like the government's so mentally ill that they'd rather just pick on mentally ill people because they're more vulnerable, and they know that they're smarter than these vulnerable people, so they can try and use them to try and get them to go into court every single month. Oh, and also the whole fining people £1,500 for accidentally bringing an illegal migrant over the border. If someone breaks into your car, hides in your thing that's on the top of sometimes they have things on top of a car, or sometimes they have something at the back of the car. If people jump into your car, smuggle themselves into your car, and you bring them across the border, and then you call the police when you find them, and you get fined for reporting like that. That's absolutely insane, to get fined for something that's not your fault. And then you've got, I'm angry about everything. I'm angry about how horrible this world is, and I don't even know how to tell these people that they're mentally ill and how they're doing everything wrong. And it's just, I don't even know if the information that I'm getting is the truth. That's also another problem. Don't know. But yeah, going to people like that to massage them, I didn't ask for that. I didn't think I was expecting that. Now that is vulnerable, and then you should just think, the most vulnerable people who are more vulnerable than me, are people who are under 12 or maybe 14, under 14, and literally not able to think properly because of them being a child. People that are over 80 and are losing their mind, losing their strength, not able to fight off people if they're attacked, or if someone tries to steal the shopping bags. These are the people who are the most vulnerable. Even if you have a missing leg, I could still do massage if I had a missing leg. I can't do it with missing arms, but I can do it with a missing leg. And I feel like if I had a missing leg but had £1 million house that I was living in, I am far less vulnerable than someone that has no money, or I'm not that bad now. I have been working a lot and I have earned money through this, but I've been earning it through doing quite a dangerous job, especially the outdoors. haven't done outcalls in a long time. But when I first came here, actually, I did do a couple of outcalls because I wasn't sure if I would even get work in Birmingham. You know, going to a completely different area where you've never been before. You know, there was a couple of months where I was taking outcalls, and I have taken out calls to hotels. Sometimes nice hotels are okay. If you're walking into a hotel, it's fine. But there are plenty of dangerous houses that I've walked into because I was desperate to get the 60 quid. And therefore, the idea that you're vulnerable just because you have a missing leg or a health problem, or you're mentally unwell, but at the same time, you still own a couple of properties. You know, Sophie is vulnerable, yes. But she is vulnerable regardless to how many properties she has. The more properties she has, the more vulnerable she actually is. And yet she still wants to get more properties because she doesn't realize how vulnerable she actually is. Giving her money and you know, extra £6,000 a year, that's only making her feel less vulnerable, even though she still is vulnerable. And it's just like, if someone is mentally vulnerable, giving them more money is actually just making them more of a target for people, more of a target for scammers, and more of a... It's probably making them more vulnerable. Why? Because they think they have this security. Oh, I'm okay. I have this security of £6,000, so I can go on a big, expensive luxury holiday or whatever because I've got the money coming through. And then what happens if one day the money doesn't come through, and then they suddenly realize, oh wait, there, maybe I should have actually been building up my skills, trying to find a job that I like doing. You know, giving them personal independence payments are not helping them if their problem is actually just making terrible decisions. And yeah, my sister has never been well, she was dependent on her husband, definitely. And I think when he was paying tax, I think it was completely, I couldn't complain about something like that because, you know, I felt like they were just getting the tax money back from what he had paid over the years. I always think that tax is incredibly high and shouldn't be that high. So if there's someone who's paying for two people, I do think that there should be not a marriage allowance, maybe well, not a marriage allowance, maybe a marriage allowance if one person is not working or something, but or can't work for a certain reason. But I think sometimes though you can't, if your partner's earning 100,000 a year and the most you could earn is £7 or £10 an hour, you know, that I can understand that even though you're not mentally unwell, you wouldn't want to work for that because there's no point, and therefore a PIP allowance for that is okay. But if the person's not paying tax, then yeah, why should the taxpayers' money help these people?